if we're not careful, will seep into the church and it will seep into our own individual lives. And I believe the spirit of the age is Pharisaicalism. In other words, it's this idea of the Pharisees. The Pharisees, you don't know, during the first century when Jesus was walking the earth, he had confrontation with the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were religious leaders, and they were the ones who wanted to make sure that they kept the purity of following God as strict and as right as possible. And they got it half right. They wanted to do exactly what Moses had commanded them, what God had spoken through Moses. They wanted to make sure that they did all the dietary restrictions right. They wanted to make sure that they kept holy and pure and separate from other nations. They wanted to make sure that their financial integrity was right. I mean, all of these things that they had instilled within them, it was right and it was good. But the thing that they did right was the thing that actually brought them down as Pharisees. What they did then was result is they became the religious leaders who tried to put burdens on the people that weren't even found in Scripture. They wanted to be so pure, so right, so holy, so clean, and they began to put in extra laws to make sure that they would never transgress what God had for them. And as a result of that, they began to put heavy burdens on the people. And if the people weren't doing exactly what they said was right and holy and pure, they would cancel people in their day as well. They would excommunicate them from the temple. They wouldn't allow them to come and worship God any longer. If you don't do it our way, then you can't be part of us. And it's that same idea of being Pharisees. We're quick to point the finger. We're quick to judge. You're doing it wrong. You're not right. And this whole idea of pointing the finger hasn't gone away since the first century. And Jesus is in the temple one day and he's preaching, and Scripture says there's this large crowd that comes and they all gather around Jesus. And Jesus in the day as he teaches is different than us. He sits down and he begins to teach the people. And as he begins to teach the people are enraptured what Jesus is speaking to them, because he's speaking a different message than what the Pharisees were teaching. And off to the corner, off in the distance, where there's this loud commotion, and the people begin to get distracted at what Jesus is saying, and their heads turn, and they hear screaming, and they hear fear and worry, and everybody turns their eyes, and the Pharisees have grabbed a woman by her collar, and they drag her and place her right in the midst of the crowd. And now everyone is quiet as the Pharisees point their finger at this woman, and in effect pointing their finger at Jesus, and say, we caught this woman in the very act of adultery. And you can almost hear the crowd. She did what? Well, I would never do anything like that. I can't believe that. We're upright, upstanding citizens here listening to a teacher. We're in the temple, and this woman, and if it was in modern day terms, people would start taking pictures. They would start sending out Twitter tweets. They would begin to send out photos on Instagram. Look who we caught. Twitter, do your thing. She needs a public shaming. And the Pharisees, as they point their finger at this woman, they say, the law of Moses says we should stone her and kill her. Jesus, what do you say? And this is the crux of what I want to teach today, and I don't want you to miss it. God is not driven by rage. He's moved with compassion.